Hi, thank you for having me. My name is Kate Donnelly. I live in Hampton, Connecticut. I am running for state representative for the 47th district. The 47th district has many towns, 9 towns in fact: Chaplin, Hampton, Scotland, Franklin, Canterbury, Sprague, and parts of Lebanon, Lisbon, and Norwich. So it's a very spread out rural district. I think one of the most beautiful in the state, and I should say the most beautiful in the state. I'm running because I think that we could be doing a much better job in the state of Connecticut. We need people from Eastern Connecticut that are going to really be strong, positive voices and advocates for Eastern Connecticut and Hartford, and that's what I'd like to do. My background is I've lived in Hampton for 35 years. I have a small business with my husband for the past 42 years, I think now. I've also been working in the solar industry over the last 10 years. I manage the solar ice programs across the state of Connecticut and have done 85 communities in Connecticut, talking about the benefits of solar and advocating for people to do residential solar. I have 3 children. They've all gone to public school. They were educated at Parish Hill High School and have gone on. They're in their 20s and 30s now. So I have some free time. It's not what I expected to do at my age, but I do feel that I have a lot to offer. I've been on one of my local school boards, and we have 2 in Hampton. A town of less than 2,000 people has 2 school boards of 18 people. So that's in and of itself one of the inefficiencies I would think we can work on in the state. But I have been on the school board. I'm on Regional District 11 school board now. I was on the elementary school boards for almost, I guess, 15, 16 years now, a total of. I was the first select woman in Hampton for a few years. I believe in community service. I believe it's essential for all of us to step up and be part of the system. And I think we need it now more than ever. We need positive voices that will be able to bring some wisdom to the dilemmas that we are facing today.
Thank you. Having observed the current representative, how would you see what the differences might be if you were representing that district, as politically, ideologically?
I think there's many ways. I am not a big fan of our current representative. I think he has been a negative influence in the legislature. He tends to vote no for most things, many things. He doesn't work in a bipartisan way. Just spends a lot of time blaming Democrats for the issues of the problems. But beyond that issue, I'm a strong advocate of a $15 minimum wage. I believe that we need to bring more efficiencies into the state of Connecticut. I think it's essential that we build a strong economy with good paying jobs, that should be our priority. I think all people should be able to afford and have good health care. I believe that our school systems are some of the best in the nation, but here in Eastern Connecticut, we are struggling with declining populations. We are struggling with keeping our schools adequately funded, and with over-reliance on property taxes. I think it's a big issue. So I believe very strongly that we need to incentivize working regionally in our school districts. I think cities and towns certainly can have their own schools, but there's many, many efficiencies that can be realized across both schools and town governments. So I think that that's very essential. I also am a big believer in human rights. I feel that women should be paid equally to men. I think it's long past due. It's not a radical concept. I think that my current representative voted against pay equity. He voted against banning gay conversion therapy. I think he's basically been out of step with the people in his district. He's also voted against expansion of Medicare rights. He's voted to end financial aid in the state of Connecticut. I believe it's essential to give people the help that they need in a reasonable way. And I think that we need someone who's going to do that. And also just advocate for Eastern Connecticut. I think we're the forgotten corner, and we need to really work to make sure that the ECS formulas are equal, to make sure that, or adequate for addressing small rural communities as well as cities within the state.
Kind of looming over everything is the, once again, a projected deficit. Adds up to $4.5 billion, give or take a few hundred million over the next 2 years. Any thoughts on how the state might begin to address that so it can get to several of the other policies that you point to, but have to balance the budget?
Yeah, I think that it's absolutely essential to have a balanced budget, and I think there's not one silver bullet, so to speak, to remedy it. It's going to take a lot of work and a lot of concessions and a lot of small things which might add up to making that happen. I believe in Ned Lamont's plan. I support the direction that he is talking about for the state. I think we need to look into and investigate adequate new income for the state, perhaps in the form of tolls and other things. I think we need to really make sure that we match up. There's a lot of jobs available, but we need to make sure that people are prepared and trained to go into those jobs. There's many happening. I believe it was 20,000 new jobs are being created around in the state of Connecticut. And I think one of the problems with employers is that training, and I think that training is essential. Once people are hired and we have more well-paid people in the state, that's also going to increase our income tax. So I think there's a lot of different efficiencies we can realize. I feel that a vastly overlooked thing within the state, and something I'm very passionate about, is efficiency in energy. I think that we have the capability to make our town, state, city, and private buildings more energy efficient, and which would save, millions of dollars. It's a proven thing that it really helps all of us in realizing, and it helps our environment, and it creates jobs. So I think renewable energy, wind, solar, and energy efficiency should really be. We've tried in Connecticut. I'm not quite sure why it hasn't been as successful as it should be, but I think that one of my goals is to get on the Energy and Technology Committee and to really work to advocate for clean energy and energy efficiency in the state.
Looking at the district, a lot of small towns for the most part, as we talked about, rural towns. Conventional wisdom would be it'd be a conservative area, it'd be more 10 Republican. Is that a fair assessment of the district, or maybe it's more nuanced than outsider might consider?
Yeah, I think it's more nuanced than that. I think it's as across the nation, unaffiliated voters are the greatest voting bloc. So it's really about reaching those voters in terms of the issues. Republicans and Democrats, I think, are about equally divided in the 47th district, and unaffiliateds maybe have a little bit of edge on both of them.
And just from on the ground feeling, is it varied kind of by village and sections?
Wow, it's varied by home to home. I mean, I've been knocking on a lot of doors, which I actually enjoy. That's something I never thought I could say, that I enjoy knocking on doors, but I've been meeting people in all of these towns, and it's really an interesting experience, and you really get to know what people are thinking about and what they need to have productive and fulfilling lives. And I'd say door to door varies. One, you have somebody who just is totally, very conservative, and the next you have someone who is the exact opposite, and then you have a bunch of people who just have one specific issue that they care about, and that's really what they vote on.
What's the job situation up there, and what might be necessary? Is there a need to grow jobs in that area?
Certainly. I think there's a need to grow jobs across the state. I think, it depends on this 47th district. It goes from the north northeastern Connecticut to southeastern Connecticut, and it varies. A lot of people are employed at Electric Boat. There's a lot of workers at UConn and Eastern Connecticut State University. There's a lot of farmers and big farms, relatively big farms, and boutique, so-called boutique farms. So there's a lot of small business, small industry happening, and a lot of, and I think there is a need for jobs. I do believe, though, that making sure that our QVCC and Three Rivers and Yukon and Eastern and the regional technical and agricultural schools are aligned with what's needed for the jobs that are available is the most important thing that we need to do right now in terms of jobs creation.
And what do they need to align with? You mentioned Electric Boat.
Yeah, I think of the Electric Boat. I think, in terms of the agricultural schools, that's really promising area. We have 3 agricultural schools within the district, 3, perhaps 4. I'm not quite sure, but they each offer different kinds of agricultural training. But I think that they could be closer aligned with some of the jobs and the new techniques that's happening in farming. There's a lot of healthcare jobs available. I believe that we need to make sure that our technical schools are doing healthcare training as well as some of the more, electrical. There's absolute need for first-class electricians and plumbers and all of those jobs. And I think that we need to make sure, a lot of students don't want to go on to college or advanced learning, at least not right away. Sometimes, people go after they've been out in the work world for a while. But I think that our technical and regional high schools really can help guide people. For instance, our school at Parish Hill, we have an allied health course now. It's very introductory work on allied health, but it gives kids an idea of some of the things that are out there and gives them some initial training.
You mentioned your support for a $15 minimum wage, if I heard
Yes.
correctly. How about mandatory paid family leave? Would you support it? And
I do support it. I think
how do we
it's
pay for
time.
it,
I think it's time. The surrounding states offer it. I think that we keep talking about losing our youth to, Boston and New York. I think that if one of the things that's attractive is the fact that they have a good benefits available in those states. And if we don't want to lose people, that we need to pay them well. And also, people have to have that to live their lives in a way that's meaningful to them. When somebody has a child, when I certainly am of the age now that I know what it's like to take care of aging parents and go through that process of losing my parents and the need to have time off to be able to do that, and so that complete the cycle of life with your parents and begin the cycle of life with your children is very important. How we're going to pay for it, I think that there are ways to employers and employees can work together to make that happen. I think that that's something that we do certainly with many of our benefit programs, that we chip in for them.
We're also asking, and I think you mentioned it briefly, tolls. It sounded like you were in support of using that as a way of raising necessary revenues for transportation.
I do. I believe that we need to find the way to make that possible. That right now we're the only state in New England that doesn't have tolls. We have a lot of traffic going through from north, every direction through our state without paying or working to help our take care of our roads and bridges. So I think that we need to figure out a way to do it so it's the least burdensome on the people within the state of Connecticut who are commuting to work. I think they do it in Massachusetts. My son lives in Boston. He, when I go visit him, I pay a lot more for my toll than he does for his toll. So because he's, employed in the city of Boston. So I think that there's ways to do it without losing our federal funding, and that we just need to be careful about it and try it out and see. And I do believe that money should go into a transportation lockbox. I don't think it should be in the general fund. I think that that's very important to make sure that the money that's generated from tolls goes to transportation. And I have an electric car. My husband has an electric car. We don't pay our share of gas tax. So I'm sorry about that, but I believe that electric cars and with our solar installation on our home are really doing the most for the environment, and also providing a very hopefully helping us in our retirement fix our costs. So, but I'm more than willing to pay for the roads, and I think that those tolls might be a way to for all of us to pay equally for our tolls, for our transportation.
Yeah,
costs.
down here, and I'm going to toss it to Amanda, but down here we had a controversial debate over millstone and nuclear plant, and how Dominion is allowed to go out and sell the power it generates. It wanted to be in the same market with renewables. There was certainly pushback from some of the renewable industries about that. We're kind of still waiting for the regulatory authority to judge how that process will work. Do you have a position on whether that approach made sense? Because it potentially, depending how this process goes forward, could end up back in the legislator's lap if it needs some adjustments.
Yeah, I do believe that solar and wind and hydro should be Class 1 renewables. I don't believe nuclear should be in that category. I believe that there's another that it doesn't have to be in there with oil and other things. I think there's ways to nuance it. I don't think it's an either or. I do believe that our solar, wind need a lot of incentivization, not even monetary incentivization, but they need to be really pushed. We have a crisis in the environment happening now nationally. I mean, the new study shows that we're in peril, and I think that we can be do a lot of good work in Connecticut, and we started to do a lot of good work, and I think we're getting there. But I think I don't know if it's a fiscal crisis or what, that sort of well, they took a lot of money from the energy fund, so that was a huge mistake, I think. But I think that that we have to carefully balance our need to protect our environment in this beautiful state and nation and world, and other industrial and issues. So I think we need to be careful about it. And I believe that nuclear has gotten us where we are, but I don't think it comes without dangers and possible problems.
Amanda, you got
Sure. So this particular race is a repeat of 2 years ago.
Yes.
when you ran against Representative Dubitsky. Did you learn anything in particular from running last time, and how have you kind of changed your approach coming into this race this year?
Well, I think that the most important thing is to listen to voters, and that's what I've been doing. I did that 2 years ago. I'm doing it now. Right now, I have a lot more name recognition. I knock on people's doors, and they say, "Oh, hi, I remember you from 2 years ago." So there's that. I think and I've worked and learned over the last couple of years, and believe pretty strongly that it takes that kind of field work to run a campaign, and that's what I'm doing.
All right. I did have a question, but I completely forgot it. Did you have any other questions that you want to address, Paul?
Yeah, we were going to ask everyone their position on whether they support legalizing marijuana for recreational use among adults 21 and older.
Absolutely. I think it's long past time. I think there's many reasons to do it. Where the states around us have done it. The Colorado and Oregon have had a pretty good history now, and figuring out if it's been harmful in any way to their state. They found that there are no increased users among marijuana users that used to use it or are still using it, and they haven't had a big uptick, especially in youth. So I think that the statistics are with us. I think it can have a big helpful effect on the opioid crisis. I think it's another tool in the arsenal for pain management, and I think that's something that I know we have legalized medical marijuana, but access to that is not quite that easy. So I think that recreational marijuana can certainly help that crisis. I think it would, take some of the burden off our prison systems. It's absolutely deplorable that how many people are in jail, and there's such a racial bias around that there's so many more people of color in jail for recreational marijuana. And I think that that will help save money for the state. And I think that we could use the income, and I would like to see the income used and directed towards mental health services, as well as working against the opioid crisis. I think that Eastern Connecticut has really taken a hit in that area, and we certainly don't get our share of mental health services in terms of allocation of resources. So I think that this could be something that would be helpful.
Did you find that question?
I did. So earlier in the interview, you talked about how we do kind of depend pretty heavily on property taxes. Another thing that's been kind of floating around this, election cycle is the Republican candidate for governor, Stefanowski, proposed getting rid of the income tax eventually. Do you think that such a plan is feasible? Would you support it? Kind of how does that play into, solving state issues, keeping people here, that whole maelstrom of
I mean, there's just no way we can cut out that income from our state budget without collapsing. I think it's absurd. I've knocked on a lot of doors, and Republicans, Democrats, and unaffiliated voters, and they say, "Who's he kidding? We get rid of the income tax, our property taxes go sky high." There's no way we can do that. It won't work. I do think that Ned Lamont's plan to alleviation of property taxes makes a lot of sense. Those of us who live, especially in small towns, I know that cities have a big burden in property taxes, but small communities do too. It's not just the cities, and so I believe that some break on property taxes, especially for seniors, is very, very important.
Poverty is certainly an issue for our urban centers, but I suspect it's also an issue maybe more than people would realize or acknowledge in some of these smaller towns and such. Is that fair to say?
I think it's fair to say.
Yeah.
There's a lot of issues of poverty, and I think transportation plays a big part in that. There's not really public transportation in order to get to a job or to appointments or to do things. People need cars, and I think that's an additional burden. So I think that much more so even than in a city, that you need that. That's one more thing you need to survive in the country. And I think that people do a good job of taking care of their own. I think all of our small towns and big cities have good nonprofit agencies that help, but it is an issue, yes.
And being a rematch, are there factors you think give you a fighting chance in a second try at the seat?
Well, I think that things certainly have changed on the national and statewide level since 2016, and much as a result of 2016. So I think that people are motivated. More people are motivated to vote. I hope people get out. I hope everyone gets out and votes, regardless of the outcome. I think voting is essential, and I think a lot of people sat out that 2016 election. So I think that I have hope that people have awakened and seen the problem, and I also believe that people, with Governor Malloy not running and an opportunity to vote in a new governor, I think that's going to play a big part in it too. People want to be involved in that process, so I hope that turnout will help my campaign.
That's all I had. I don't know if you had any more, Amanda.
So just over the course of the interview, you've mentioned a lot of things like healthcare, jobs, education, and I know that you have a very large district to cover, the second largest in the state. If you had to pick like two main issues that your voters have said, hey, this is what I'm concerned about, what are they?
Education, and healthcare. I've heard a lot of people talk about healthcare on a very personal, individual level. People want to maintain their good quality schools, and they don't want to continue to have increases of property taxes to do it. People also want to make sure that they can live comfortably, have health care, and get the health services they need in addition to the insurance that would be provided. So I think those are the really biggest issues. And of course, jobs. You know, people, I think that's an ever going thing, especially for a lot of parents of kids graduating from college and high school.
And education in what way is their concern? Is it?
Well, the cost of educating students in a small school system
Okay.
continue to increase, and I think there's a very big fear that cost is going to somehow change the quality of the education. And in fact, in some cases, it has. So I think people want to make sure that they have adequately funded quality schools, and yeah.
So imagine in any cost-sharing formula, you would be advocating to make sure that the
Absolutely.
communities like yours don't get shot into the stick.
Yeah, I think ECS formulation needs to be changed and seriously looked into. There's just so much regulation too by the state in terms of education and what we need to do, and I think it needs a bit of an overhaul.
I think we have to wrap up there. I don't know if there's anything you want to add or close.
No,
with.
I just thank you for the opportunity to do this, and I look forward to people getting out and voting in a couple of weeks. It's just a couple of weeks away.
Well, thank you for making the trip down. I know.
Thank you.